Hey everybody, David here. This is day 7 of crypto, DeFi, and PegNet talks that I'm doing. And I've got my To the Moon by Coinbase shirt on today. And that inspired me to kind of go back to basics. There's a lot of new people flowing into the crypto ecosystem because of what's going on in the broader economy. So I wanted to kind of go back to basics and talk about why cryptocurrency is compelling. And the number one thing that you learn first is that cryptocurrency has scarcity, right? People learn pretty early on there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence, right? And that it's controlled by a predictable inflation curve, right? At the beginning, 50 new Bitcoin were rewarded to miners every 10 minutes. After 4 years, that went to 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And then eventually 12.5 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And you've probably heard the halvening is approaching for both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Core. Bitcoin Cash in about 20 days, about 50 days now for Bitcoin Core. And that mining reward will go from 12.5 Bitcoin per block to 6.25 Bitcoin per block. So only half as much Bitcoin will be created. And this has a real effect on the market because if there's demand for Bitcoin or Ethereum, any of these scarce assets, as their supplies decline, obviously that increases the feeling of scarcity as there's still demand for the tokens, but less supply coming onto the market. So the monetary policy of crypto isn't really deflationary. It's not necessarily a declining number of tokens in the case of Bitcoin or Ether, but there is a predictable inflation curve. There's a predictable number of new units that are coming into the system. And of course, this is juxtaposed to the central banking system where you effectively have an unknown and unlimited number of currency units that are entering the system all the time. And so you really have the situation where prices always go up and your buying power always goes down in dollar terms, right? You look at since 1913, when the Fed was created, I believe it's 97, 98% of the US buying power has been eroded, right? It takes, therefore, let's say 50 times more dollars to buy the same item as it did back in 1913. And that's because of inflation, right? It's not because productivity has declined. We live in this golden age of robotics and internet-based productivity. It's because the number of units in the system has increased, right? So people have gotten used to prices going up every year more and more and more. So, just wanted to go back to those basics. Why Bitcoin, Ethereum, PegNet, all these systems are so attractive to me is because they're honest. There's no back room where somebody's deciding how many units get created today or this year, and there's nobody special that gets to hand out these magical units or decides who gets this inflation in the system. Because in an inflationary system, it's the first people that get those units that get the most benefits. So, I love the honesty and transparency of crypto. That always attracted me very early on because these are systems that people can audit themselves, they can verify themselves, and that follow sort of this predictable set of metrics that's very, very easy to understand. We don't have to, speculate about what the future number of Bitcoin or Ether will be. We know from some very simple math, you can extrapolate what the supply will be. So, encourage people to, sort of understand these basics. That's what's compelling is there'll never be more than that fixed supply. There'll never be more than that inflation curve, and in a lot of cases these inflation curves decline over time. And so it sort of models in a digital form what we've seen with gold and why gold has maintained its value for thousands of years. You can't make any free gold despite all of the efforts of the alchemists. Nobody is making any free gold. It's still time and energy goes into mining and refining gold. So it's an honest system that no government, no matter how powerful, can cheat this system and print gold and give it to their friends. So it's an honest system. It's a scarce resource. It does increase. There's more gold mined every year, but 1-2%, not an enormous amount of new supply. And so it's tended to keep a very constant amount of buying power over time, regardless of culture or economic system. Gold has been very powerful in that way. And so a lot of these monetary systems in crypto are reaching that same type of inflation model of 1-2% a year as they mature, so that they don't have an adverse effect on buying power. Even without an enormous number of increase in users, it still maintains its value over time. So think about those economics. That's what really drives this whole industry. It's scarcity, it's utility of being able to send that value back and forth to anybody that you choose with no intermediaries and extremely low costs. That's where PegNet really comes in. It has even pegged gold and pegged dollars and all of these assets. And so, that's where we get this benefit, is as you see this massive inflation wave that's being unleashed from the central banks around the world, consider that there is an alternative. And part of why I picked this shirt today is yesterday we were saying, it's interesting that there was an initial large correction in crypto as sort of people fled, assets that weren't cash in their hand. But now we've seen a reversal. It'll be interesting to see if that's sustained. But today prices were up 15-20% for Bitcoin and Ether and Bitcoin Cash and a lot of the top assets. And it'll be curious to see if people are realizing, oh, everything's going digital. The ATMs are out of cash. The bank branches are closing. What I really need is cash in my phone and something that I can spend online. So we'll see. It looks like so far it's being retail led. And the question is there enough retail interest growing to sort of build this wave of people flipping over to digital assets instead of the old traditional legacy assets? So we'll find out more tomorrow. There'll likely be a lot of volatility both ways, especially as we go through this crisis. And there's the halvening coming in a few weeks for Bitcoin Cash and a month and a half or so for Bitcoin Core. And so keep an eye on those aspects. But I wouldn't be surprised if crypto prices really started to do well if people understand the reason part of this financial system isn't working is because it's based on debt. The central banks aren't backing their currency with anything. And so, in a world where people have an alternative, now they can switch. Now they can use that alternative. So 10, 20 years ago, they didn't have an alternative. Okay, well, what can you do? But today there is an alternative. So go to Coinbase, go to pegnetmarketcap.com, check out these technologies, get a wallet, get signed up, empower yourself, and put your value in the digital form in whatever you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with pegged gold, that's fine. If you're comfortable with, still want to go with dollars, but you want digital dollars, that's fine. That's a good place to start. But I think you'll find over time that the monetary policy of these cryptos and the scarcity that they provide and the honesty that they provide in the inflation rate is truly compelling. I'm glad I put all my value into Bitcoin in 2012, and I think the guy that does the same today into Ethereum or Bitcoin Cash or other tokens will have the same story in 5 or 10 years. So anyway, stay safe, be kind to one another, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Goodbye.